Hello and welcome to CarWale. Now it's been 5 years since we drove this, which at that time was the all new Force Motors Gurkha. And now we have this, the 2021 Force Motors Gurkha. Now let's find out what's new in this and if this should be your choice of lifestyle SUV. But before we begin, we request you to subscribe to CarWale YouTube channel. We are so close to hitting 1 lakh subscribers and your support makes us work even harder to bring you more exciting content. There is no denying the fact that the Gurkha looks like the modern take on a utilitarian version of the Mercedes-Benz G-Class. But unlike the previous gen model, the new Gurkha looks unique when looked at from the side and the rear. At the front, the Gurkha now gets all LED headlights, which have instantly made it look more premium and provide excellent illumination at night. The grille now proudly features the Gurkha nameplate on it rather than the Force Motors logo. This should save some owners the trouble of getting one from the aftermarket. The new Gurkha is 22mm wider, 20mm taller and 124mm longer than before, and it shows. In spite of this, it looks more hunkered down than before. This is because of the bigger front bumper, better integrated wheel fenders, lower wheel well gap and the less fussy design overall. On that note, we should mention that the alloy wheels and the 16-inch Apollo Aptera all-terrain tires you see here are not part of the standard fitment but are official accessories. Other accessories on this test unit include the front windshield guard and the roof rails. The new window design all around, including the flush fitting front windshield, large rear side window and the rear windshield which merges seamlessly with the smaller glass elements at the rear, make the Gurkha look larger and more premium. And that should help the Gurkha fit in better in an urban environment, which should match the expectations of the urban user Force Motors hopes to attract. What do you think of the Gurkha's design? Let us know in the comments below. Step inside the new Gurkha and you find out that the design now is much more cohesive and all the materials that they have used are much more better than before. It's better, but it's not suddenly become so good as to take on compact SUVs like the Kia Sonet. There are still rough edges and utilitarian materials used all around the cabin. Welcome changes in terms of equipment include large analog dials in the instrument cluster and a small digital driver information display, an extremely useful tire pressure monitor and the brand new 7-inch Kenwood touchscreen infotainment system. While the addition of a touchscreen makes the cabin look more upmarket and it has smartphone mirroring including Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, the interface is slow and the sound from the 4-speaker system leaves much to be desired. The good thing is you now have a display for Google Maps in your field of vision. There are fewer chances of you getting lost in the urban or the actual jungle. The new Force Gurkha is a proper 4-seater, and unlike the Mahindra Thar, this can actually seat 4 in reasonable comfort. The ingress and egress into the front seats have improved massively thanks to the larger doors, and the rear passengers can use the rear sideways opening door to access the rear seats rather than try and clamber over the front passenger seat. Access may be restricted if you utilize the massive 500 liters of boot space available behind the rear seats completely, but this can be rectified by getting the roof rack from the official accessories list. Apart from the easier ingress and egress, the rake and reach adjustable steering wheel improves the ergonomics for shorter drivers. Those with larger frames, like me, will find the gap between the seat and the steering wheel still a bit tight. And the almost Bharatanatyam Mudumundo posture you have to adopt because of the tightly placed pedals mean you don't sit very comfortably. Longer drives may require more stops to stretch out. The view out is amazing thanks to large windows all around, especially for the rear passengers. That massive rear side window lets in a lot of light to brighten up the cabin. You cannot open the window at all, so the front occupants will need to be disturbed to let in some fresh air on the move. But with one touch down front windows, they should be able to comply very easily. There are no dedicated AC vents for the rear occupants. but the AC felt more than capable of cooling the cabin quickly during the short hot spells we encountered during our shoot. We will have to test the Gurkha for a longer period to ascertain if those large fixed rear side windows make the cabin less comfortable in the summer. The rear seats cannot be adjusted to improve legroom, though seating two 6-footers one behind the other isn't an issue. The seat back can be adjusted for recline, and there is a handy foldable armrest too. Passengers here will have to make do with lap belts though. The rear seats also feature ISOFIX child seat mounting points, which is a welcome addition for those looking to take their children on adventures. Force Motors has developed the Gurkha extensively so that it complies with the latest crash test and pedestrian safety norms. This means the panels at the front are not made of metal anymore, and there are crumple zones both at the front and the rear. Equipment like ABS and EBD, seat belt reminders, dual front airbags, speed sensing door locks, central locking, and rear parking sensors are offered as standard too. So now let's drive this Gurkha on the road and find out how it is. Powering the Gurkha is an updated BS6 version of the familiar Mercedes-Benz sourced 2.6-litre 4-cylinder turbo diesel motor. It now develops slightly more power and torque than before. But the focus for Force Motors was to make it more refined. Unless you open the front windows, the engine is not as noisy, and the vibrations on the move are limited too, a big improvement from before. Even the 5-speed gearbox has been worked on to reduce the vibrations being felt on the gear lever and improve the shift action overall. There is a new gear knob for the 4x4 lever, and the position of the twist levers for the locking differentials have changed, but all of them require some muscling to be engaged. So on the move, you can feel the changes that have been made to the Gurkha in this all new ground up design. So the engine is quieter, more refined. The ride is much better, much more planted than before. It still shakes a bit, but it's much better than before. All these changes mean that this is a much better SUV to drive on the road, but it still remains, it has that old school feel to it. With 90 brake horsepower and 250 Newton meters of torque, this is no speed monster. With its slow revving nature and short gear ratios, the Gurkha is best driven using its torque curve, which starts at a low 1400 RPM. With all that torque to be used, the Gurkha can easily cruise at speeds around 80 to 100 km per hour. Overtakes will require some planning though. Its utilitarian origins are evident thanks to the long throw and rubbery shifts, but at least the clutch is light and the bite point is easy to work around. The ride quality has been improved, especially on tarmac. The Gurkha rolls less, is less fussy over broken patches, or when encountering sudden road imperfections. But don't expect this to match the ride quality offered by monocoque chassis pseudo SUVs. The Gurkha is still more at home over broken tarmac or when the road disappears completely. The way it smoothens the undulations out is unmatched, and you can confidently drive fast over broken roads. Rear seat passengers will find the ride of the Gurkha not as pleasing. They sit directly over the rear axle and feel every body or suspension movement. The ride is thankfully much better on smoother tarmac, but if they are being driven by an enthusiastic driver, the body roll and constant micro movements could make them nauseous. The legends about the Gurkha's ability off the road will continue to be made. The terrain this one can handle even when in two-wheel drive mode is amazing for an off-road rookie like me. Add the 205mm of ground clearance, 700mm of water wading capability, 35 degrees of gradability, and manually activated front and rear locking differentials, and this Gurkha achieves mountain goat-like sure-footedness, making you feel like a driving hero everywhere. So what have we found out after a quick drive of this SUV? The Force Gurkha is now much better in terms of refinement, in terms of features, and its on-road dynamics. It is at home both in the city as well as out in this jungle. So what does Force have to do now? It has to get the pricing right, it has to get the service centers right, and it has to get the public perception of this SUV right. The previous generation of the Gurkha in its 3-door Explorer variant cost Rs 13 lakh on road in Delhi by the time it was discontinued. Now, if its replacement is priced close to the Mahindra Thar AX Diesel MT hardtop variant, which costs about Rs 16 lakh on road Delhi, we don't see the Gurkha offering enough to tempt their target customers away from the Mahindra. The Gurkha is set to be launched on 27 September. What do you think should be the ideal price for this capable SUV to make this the ideal lifestyle SUV? Let us know in the comments below. Thank you for watching.